Jane shared her home with her partner, Oliver, and their daughter. At that time, family harmony was at a critical point. The constant arguments and disagreements between Jane and Oliver marked a complicated stage in their relationship. Although she tried hard to maintain the image of normality in front of her daughter, trying to hide the disagreements with her boyfriend. That day, the tension between the couple reached an unbearable limit, so Jane decided to take a break and go for a walk. Oliver asked her to come back to talk. However, she felt the need to be alone, collect her thoughts, and reflect on the direction she wanted to take in her life. Before leaving, Oliver noticed that Jane had forgotten her protein shake. He hurriedly picked it up and handed it to her. With her smoothie in hand, she headed towards the forest near the house. When she went for a walk alone there, she felt like she found the peace she so needed. Her life had not been easy. She had lost her parents when she was a child and had been separated from her sister in the orphanage in different adoptions, causing each one to take different paths in life. Despite this, Jane was fortunate to be welcomed by an adoptive family that treated her with love and affection, giving her the stability and affection that she had never experienced in her biological home. This experience prompted her to make a significant decision in her life. Upon meeting an orphan girl in the same orphanage where she grew up, she felt a responsibility to provide her with the happiness and joy that she had been denied in her childhood. Thus, she decided to adopt Katie. As she walked through the trees, Jane savored her protein shake, remembering the day she adopted her daughter, a memory that was mixed with the bitterness of the arguments with her partner. Feeling the need to share her thoughts and emotions, she decided to call her friend Susan. In the conversation, she revealed her decision to end her relationship with Oliver, despite the years they had been together. Suddenly, she was enveloped in a sudden dizziness. Her vision blurred, and without warning, she fell to the ground, losing consciousness. From the other end of the line, her friend repeated her name over and over again, asking if she was okay. But Jane didn't get up again. She had died. Several miles away, a new day began for Amy, Jane's sister. Although she had gotten up ready to start her workday, her routine took an unexpected turn when she received a call from a lawyer. He told her the tragic news of her sister's death and invited her to come to the firm to find out her last wishes, because her name was mentioned in the inheritance. Amy arrived at the firm, where she ran into her late sister's ex-boyfriend. Oliver's attractive appearance took her by surprise. Although the idea of having a relationship with him wasn't on her mind, she could not deny the attraction that boy gave off. They both shared their grief over the loss of Jane. At that moment, the lawyer approached them and led them to the office. There, he revealed that according to Jane's last wishes, Oliver would receive nothing. All her assets and money were intended for her daughter Katie. However, since the girl was still a minor, Amy would own Jane's house, business, money, and other assets until the girl was an adult. The only condition was that Amy assume responsibility for Katie's education and care, a choice that couldn't be imposed. Amy had to decide if she was willing to make that commitment. Oliver was surprised. He hadn't inherited anything, and he was the person with whom Jane had shared the last years of her life. Hoping to stay with Katie, he expressed his desire and affection towards the girl. However, the lawyer informed him that since they were not married and lacked a guardianship role, Katie only had Jane as her legal parent. If Amy didn't accept custody, the girl would be taken into the care of social services, returning to the orphanage to await a new adoption. Faced with this situation, Oliver proposed adopting Katie, but the lawyer warned him of the complexity of that process. There were other parents on the waiting list to adopt, and the decision would fall to social services. He would have to compete with them to obtain guardianship of the little girl. The atmosphere in the office room became tense as Oliver expressed his frustration. Despite the intense emotions that filled the air, Amy remembered that this was what her sister had decided. Jane had trusted her to take care of her daughter, her home, and everything she owned. She couldn't allow herself to let her down, even if that decision meant such important changes in her life. Amy and Jane had lost contact in recent years due to distance and their respective jobs, but they had always maintained a special and strong bond. She was faced with the opportunity to honor her sister's trust. So, despite the discomfort and bewilderment, she decided to accept the responsibility. She quit her job and moved into Jane's imposing mansion. The house, a true architectural masterpiece, reflected the success of her sister's company, a famous real estate agency specializing in the sale of luxury homes. When she arrived at her new home, the lawyer and a social worker guided her to Katie. The little girl, still affected by the recent loss of her mother, shocked the woman with her sadness. At that moment, Amy's decision was resolved. She understood that Katie needed more than a luxurious home. She required love and comfort. The lawyer took the opportunity to explain in detail all the legal aspects and procedures that she had to manage. In the middle of this conversation, suddenly, the doorbell rang. It was Oliver. Discomfort overcame the lawyer when they reminded him that he no longer had the right to enter, but he asked them to allow him to collect some belongings that had been left there. Amy graciously agreed and allowed him to take everything that was his. Katie, despite her sadness, brightened when she saw Oliver and ran to give him a hug. He reciprocated her with another hug full of emotion. Once the lawyer and social worker left, Oliver asked Amy to spend a little more time playing with the little girl. Understanding that connection between him and the girl, she nodded with a smile. Oliver proved to be extremely kind during the afternoon. His gestures and words seemed sincere. Amy couldn't help but notice how his natural charm was leaving its mark. Despite the sadness that surrounded the situation, Oliver managed to bring many smiles to little Katie. When it was time to say goodbye, the woman realized that her sister hadn't been the only one who had fallen in love with Oliver. His ability to connect with people was undeniable. After that, Katie and Amy shared their first night together. As silence settled in the mansion, both faced a new chapter in their lives, marked by Jane's absence and the uncertainty of the future. The next morning, the woman caught up on her late sister's business. Upon arriving at the agency, she was greeted by Susan, Jane's partner, who from the first moment showed a warm welcome. An incredible connection was established between them. Susan went out of her way to make her feel at home and assured her that she would be part of the family in the business. Mark, one of the employees in charge of showing properties to clients, soon joined the meeting. Mark, like Susan, proved to be very kind and loving. Their positive attitude gave Amy confidence that she would find good friends in her new city and in her new life. As the days passed, she became more and more adapted to her new routines. Living with Katie was wonderful. The girl, day after day, gained more space in her heart, creating a bond that made them inseparable. She loved hearing her affectionately call her Aunt Amy. Everything was flowing positively. Her adaptation to the neighborhood, her performance at work, and above all, her relationship with Susan and Mark, who seemed like childhood friends. Life, which at first seemed marked by sadness, was now filled with new friendships, laughter, and Katie's contagious joy. But a few days later, a call broke her happiness. They called her after carrying out the forensic analysis of her sister. Tests had revealed that Jane had been poisoned. Someone had murdered her. That left her stunned, wondering who could have motives to take her sister's life. Investigators informed her that they would continue collecting evidence to find more details in the culprit, but at that point, that was all they could share. Amy found herself caught up in a storm of unknowns. They asked her if she had noticed anything strange, anything that might point to a possible suspect. However, the news left her so shocked that she was unable to provide relevant information. Who could have reasons to murder Jane? From that day on, Amy became obsessed with the case. She shared the news with her new friends, Susan and Mark, who were shocked by the tragic revelation and promised her their unconditional support. Together, they decided to be attentive and look for clues to find the culprit of the murder. Then she began to notice Oliver's increasing appearance in her life. His constant presence at the door and his insistent interest in seeing Katie almost every day raised her suspicions. Amy began to wonder if Oliver's seduction towards her could be a tactic to gain her trust. She began to thoroughly analyze who could benefit from her sister's death. Jane had money, a beautiful house, and a lovely daughter. However, she refused to leave Oliver anything, not even custody of Katie. The thought that Oliver might be involved in Jane's death began to torment her. Would he be willing to kill her to get his entire fortune? What Oliver didn't know was Jane had taken precautions. If her sister had been poisoned, the murderer must have been someone very close, even intimate. The days passed and the doubts continued to haunt her. She decided to pay more attention to Oliver's attitude, who every time he arrived brought gifts for Katie and her. Cakes, cookies, apparently kind and thoughtful gestures. That, to Amy, began to seem excessive for someone who had just entered her life. She shared all her doubts with Mark and Susan, seeking answers to the suspicions she had. Mark looked surprised, but Susan looked thoughtful. It was then that her friend revealed something that stunned her. Her sister intended to separate from Oliver. Jane had called Susan minutes before her death to tell her of her decision to end the relationship. The pieces of the puzzle began to fit together in Amy's mind. If Jane was planning the separation, would Oliver have taken the opportunity to poison her to secure the entire inheritance? Amy felt a chill and decided to tell all the information to the police. Upon arriving at the police station, Amy shared her suspicions with the authorities. However, they told her there was no conclusive evidence. The police explained that they needed evidence that Oliver was responsible for the murder. Everything she said were assumptions, suspicions that the relationship was not going well, but it wasn't enough to ensure that he had killed her. Determined to seek justice for her sister, Amy assured them that she would not give up. And if the police didn't move forward with the investigation, she would take it upon herself to find out who was responsible for the murder. The days passed and Oliver's seductive attitude persisted. In Amy's mind, a sinister nickname began to form: the sexykiller, the killer who seduces until he kills his prey. She immersed herself in an obsessive search for the truth, determined to bring the guilty party to justice. One day, while cleaning, she discovered a phone hidden under the couch. She knew it wasn't Jane's because the police had it to analyze for evidence that could lead to the culprit. Then she remembered that Oliver had mentioned that he had lost his phone and couldn't find it anywhere. This was her chance to find out if it contained any hidden secrets, so she decided to review the photos and messages. However, she ran into an obstacle. It was password protected and she couldn't access it. Amy quickly called her friends to tell them about the discovery of the phone. Mark suggested taking it to a friend with extensive computer skills who could help them crack the password and explore the contents of the device. That could be the key to discovering if Oliver had something to hide and if he was linked in some way to Jane's death. The next day, Mark's friend called him to inform him that he had managed to access the files on Oliver's phone and that he had discovered something extremely important, something that could be crucial in the search. He promised to send him a photo by mail so he could see it after hanging up the call. Full of anticipation, he hung up the phone and opened the image that had been sent to him. The surprise left him speechless. It was a photograph of his co-worker, Susan, passionately kissing Oliver, Jane's ex-partner. Oliver and Susan were having a secret affair. That discovery turned his partner into a possible accomplice or even perpetrator of the crime. Mark was rushing to share the shocking news with Amy when he suddenly felt a sharp blow to the head. Susan had discovered him and she wasn't about to let anyone know her dark secret. She pulled out a knife with the intention of attacking Mark, when suddenly she heard noises that indicated someone else had entered the agency. She left the man's unconscious body in the back and went to greet the customers. She couldn't afford to have witnesses. While Amy received a call from the detective informing her of more evidence discovered, it was revealed that the poisoning had taken place through the milkshake. Everything pointed to Oliver being the author of the murder. She tried to call her friend Mark, but he didn't answer. So she decided to call Susan to tell her what had happened. Her friend suggested that she meet at her house later to talk calmly. That afternoon, the detective summoned Oliver for questioning. Oliver seemed surprised to be considered the possible perpetrator of the crime. He assured that he loved Jane, and that despite the problems in their relationship, he would never be able to hurt her. However, there was one moment in the interrogation that set off a storm of anxiety in him. When the detective mentioned the latest discovery about the poison in the smoothie Jane had brought with her. Oliver told the detective that if he wasn't going to stop him, he should run out of there. He had a suspicion and needed to make sure his thoughts weren't right. Oliver ran to Susan's house, who opened the door for him and tried to hug him. However, he turned away from her with displeasure. The woman noticed his distance and asked him why he wasn't being affectionate. At that moment, Oliver remembered the protein powders that Susan had brought home for him to try, and the coincidence seemed all too obvious. Jealousy had taken over Susan, who smiled mischievously at him. However, Oliver's reaction was anger, as he asked her directly, "Tell me you were not the one who killed Jane." She didn't respond, just laughed amusedly. She revealed to him that with Jane present, they could never be together and happy. She had taken it upon herself to remove the problem. Oliver yelled at her, telling her that she had lost her mind, and reminded her that he loved his dead girlfriend. That secret infidelity had been a mistake. Oliver had never fallen in love with Susan. Although he had fallen into her arms due to the problems the couple was going through, he felt terribly sorry and assured her that he never wanted anything more with her. Jane and his daughter were everything to him. She continued to hug him and try to win him over, but he was terribly angry. That woman had killed the love of his life. Suddenly, Oliver lunged at Susan, knocking her to the ground and yelling at her. At that moment, someone hit Oliver from behind. It was Amy, who had arrived at Susan's house and found that violent scene. Seeing her friend in danger, Amy decided to act immediately. She grabbed the first thing she could reach and hit the man on the head. Then, she made the decision to call the police to intervene in the situation. Amy assured her friend that Oliver would pay for the crime he had committed. But Susan, revealing her true colors, punched her and knocked her to the ground. She confessed that she was becoming a nuisance to her, just like Jane had been, so she had to finish her off. Amy couldn't believe what she was hearing. Susan claimed that Oliver only loved her and Jane was a problem in their relationship. Since Amy's arrival, Oliver also showed interest in her, something that drove her crazy. Therefore, she would also have to move her out of the way. The woman was about to hit Amy on the head to knock her unconscious when the police came through the door and ordered her out with her hands up. Behind them was Mark, who had woken up from being hit by Susan and had run to tell the police what was happening. Finally, justice was served. The sexy killer was not Oliver, but Susan, who, maddened by jealousy, had committed a murder in order to win his love. The truth would come to light and Susan would face the consequences of her actions in court. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like it. And if you want to see more Draw My Life videos, subscribe to our channel. See you in the next episode!